Just for your information, we are providing interpretation for this meeting into Spanish. If you would like to listen to the meeting in Spanish, please go to the globe at the bottom of the screen and click on Spanish.
All right.
And Maria is going to translate that for me.
Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a todos. Si quieren escuchar esta transmisión en español, por favor, presionen el icono del globo terráqueo y después seleccionen el idioma español.
Very good. Thank you, Maria, very much. And thank you all for being here today. My name is Diane Frost. I'm the Executive Director of Student Support Services, and you are in a parent information session on SEL, Social and Emotional Learning and Supports throughout our district. I have some co-presenters with me today. Joyce Hansen is our coordinator of special education, and Joyce works with elementary counselors throughout the district. Chris Dowler actually wears multiple hats. He is the principal of Pacific Beach High School. He is the deputy director of student support services, and he works with marriage and family therapists throughout the district. And then Angela Riles is with us, and she is an elementary counselor in our district. So kind of brings that perspective to this presentation. So I have a PowerPoint that I'd like to share with you. Our path this afternoon is to just give you a little bit of information about social emotional learning in San Luis Coastal, and then give you an opportunity to ask us questions about anything that you might want to know about SEL, the services we have, that type of thing. All right. So let's see if I can move this. All right. The importance of SEL. Again, SEL is social emotional learning combined with the supports that we offer our students in this area across the district. Social emotional learning really provides the foundation for safe and positive learning. So we think about the academics that we want our kids to understand each grade level. It's the SELs, your counselors will tell you, your MFTs will tell you, that build that strong base so that the kids can learn, so that they can access the academics. Joyce, talk to us a little bit about why it's important.
So in 2018, a survey of students aged 13 to 17 found that about 70% of those students feel that anxiety and depression are major problems for their peer group. They also found that about 60% of the kids feel intense pressure to get good grades, while about 30% feel pressure to look good and fit in socially. And there are dozens of other studies out there that also show the same thing. Our students are distracted by anxiety today. They're under an intensive amount of pressure, and we're just seeing more mental health issues than we have ever seen.
I wanted to kind of give you an idea of the tiers of support that are offered in San Luis Coastal, and this is not unlike districts throughout the state, districts throughout the country. We talk about 3 different tiers of social and emotional support. Your first one, prevention and proaction, that is common across your school. Every student has an opportunity for tier 1. Safe and caring learning environment, social and emotional skills instruction, kind of targeted curriculum. The idea that our PPS counselors or our counselors like Mrs. Riles are available to our students just with an open door policy. So that's your tier 1. Your tier 2 is more research-based intervention. So the child that is not fully served in tier 1 might have an SST, where we get a group of people, including the counselor, to come together to talk about this little kiddo and the supports that he or she might need. We might have social skills intervention. You'll see a pretty common tier 2 intervention at our elementary schools would be a lunch group, Could be 6 to a dozen kids who come together, who talk about any of a number of things, social skills acquisition, things like that. So small group. And then finally, our tier 3 is that intensive support. Could be one-to-one counseling with a counselor, could be with a school psychologist, could be with an MFT or a marriage and family therapist. So the grouping gets smaller as you go up the tiers, right? Your first tier is global, your second tier is small group, and your third tier would be one-to-one supports that the child might need. Joyce, you want to talk a little bit about SEL curriculum and what we're doing district-wide this coming year?
Yes. So across our elementary schools, except for Monarch Grove, all schools will be using the Second Steps curriculum. So that will be presented across all of our elementary schools. Some have been implementing this for a while, and some this will be a new implementation, but all have gotten new materials this year to support that implementation. And then at Monarch Grove, last year they applied for an innovation grant through our San Luis Coastal Education Foundation, and they were approved for that grant. So they are doing the Leader in Me curriculum and program at Monarch Grove.
And then at the secondary level, our secondary counselors sourced curriculum for students that will be presented in their general education classrooms within the first 6 weeks. But we also have health classes at our middle school and high school level. They have mental health units, things like that, that are required of our students, and we find very effective. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, the campus-wide SEL curriculum that's going to be offered at our secondary schools, not unlike the Second Steps curriculum that's being offered at the elementary schools. Sorry, trying to get this to advance. There we go. Mr. Dowler, you want to talk a little bit about our community partnerships?
Yeah, we have several partnerships with different community agencies or individuals to help support Tier 3 SEL interventions. Our first contract is perhaps our largest that provides the most amount of therapists is with Stand Strong. Stand Strong used to be known as the Women's Shelter, same nonprofit, different name. Stand Strong, as it's known now, provides therapists at every single one of our elementary school sites for the first time, every single one this year. Prior to this year, they provided marriage family therapists at 8 of our 10 elementary schools. We also have a fairly large contract with SLO County Behavioral Health, and they provide MFTs at 5 of our secondary sites. So all 5 of our secondary sites have a MFT through SLO County Behavioral Health. We also have partnerships with Community Action Partnership, San Luis Obispo, and the Link in Atascadero for family advocates. We also work with Transitions Mental Health, and they have a family advocate that works with them as well. Those 3 agencies will work on connecting families to community services that are free or low cost or discounted therapeutic services for families. And lastly, we have contracts with a couple different private MFTs from the community, primarily targeting our high school sites.
Thank you very much. Let's see, we missed one slide here, and I wanted to make sure that our group saw this. The idea of social emotional learning and the needs of our students, especially after and during the pandemic that we're experiencing, the idea that our kids are involved in distance learning instead of in-person learning. We came together as a district with our counselors, with stakeholders, and talked about the SEL needs of our kids. And we really looked at some specific things that we've implemented and plan to implement this year because of the increased need. We have increased our marriage and family therapists throughout the district, and that was something that our board approved last May, June. We knew that our kids had experienced, some of our kids had experienced some trauma during the closure, you know, the idea that they weren't coming to school every day, and we wanted to increase the therapeutic supports throughout the districts, and those MFTs support our school counselors. So you'll see that we have more than 13 additional days throughout our district of MFTs. SEL, our social emotional learning curriculum, has been kind of ratcheted up and formalized for this coming year. Mrs. Hanson talked to you about the purchase at the elementary level and the consistent curriculum we'll have across. Same thing at the secondary level, a consistent SEL curriculum. We also are adding an additional counseling position, and it will be a counselor on special assignment, and that person will coordinate all counseling, all therapeutic supports, all SEL across the district, making sure that our students and parents get the supports that they need. We also are implementing a universal screener across the district. And this is something that our students take a screener. It's an online questionnaire, and our teachers do the same thing, and that's looking at the social emotional needs of the students. The teachers will talk about the needs of the students, and students will talk about their own needs in a screener. And then we try to plan for those needs. And then finally, just last week, we had district-wide training for all administrators and teachers in the area of SEL, kind of starting that conversation with our staff. What does it look like in distance learning? When you're in a classroom person to person with kiddos, our teachers are pretty proficient at identifying their students' needs. We wanted to talk about what that looked like in distance learning. How do you identify students who have needs, and then the pathways that you take to get them the supports that they need? So all of those things are new for San Luis Coastal this year in supporting the SEL needs of our students. We do have just kind of some common questions that any of the four of us might get from parents. The first is, how does my child access the school counselor during distance learning? Email will be your friend. A parent can email a counselor, a student can email a counselor. So trying to get an appointment with your counselor, and our counselors will have time to meet with students. Our MFTs, our marriage and family therapists, have continued to provide tele support for their kids, and we will be doing that as we are on distance learning this year as well. Are school counselors still addressing the academic needs of students? Yes. So we know how important social emotional learning and social emotional needs are, but we also understand that our kids have academic needs as well. Our counselors are available to support the academic needs of their students as well. And then I think, Angela, this is a good one for you to answer. Last year, my child was able to participate in small group counseling at the elementary school. Will that still be available this year?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think every site looks different, but all the counselors that work within San Luis Coastal at the elementary level are planning on doing small group counseling this year. Obviously, that will be through a virtual format until we return in person. But as every year, when you rejoin counseling, we do need new forms signed and those kinds of things. So if your child did receive counseling last year and you're interested in receiving it again, then be sure that you reach out to your school counselor so they can get you the right paperwork. We also this year, just to add on, we are sending a family support survey home to families at the elementary level to just get a good gauge on how COVID and distance learning has impacted your family. And the responses from that will also help us generate small groups, one-on-one support throughout the year. So that's kind of how we're going to be addressing the small group needs.
Good, thank you. And then we just wanted to give the group an opportunity to ask questions that you might have about our PPS counselors. Those are the counselors at every one of your sites, and MFT, or other supports that we have throughout the district. And I think Mandy is going to help us with questions.
Okay, so if you would like to ask a question, please go to the participants icon at the bottom of your screen. You can click there and go to the blue raise your hand icon to the right. And then we'll go ahead and call on you. When we call on you, you can unmute. And if you would like to have your video show, just go ahead and click start video.
So any questions from the group?
There's Marieke van Beurden.
Okay.
Hi, yes, it's Marika. But my question is regarding the universal screener. What is the name of the screener that you guys are using? And with my young child, I have a second grader. When can I expect him to be doing that?
Good question. The universal screener we're using is through a company called FastBridge, and they do tiers of support across topics. So not just SEL, they have math intervention, English language arts intervention, that type of thing. Through FastBridge, we are using something called Sabers and My Sabers. Sabers, it's SAEBRS, is the teacher version of it, and then My Sabers is the student version of it. We will not be implementing for about 6 weeks. We want our kids to get grounded in their classrooms. We want our teachers to get to know our kids, and then we'll be doing the universal screener. Excellent question. Thank you.
Thank you.
What other questions in this area do our guests have?
Lena has a question.
Okay.
Hi, I had a quick question about the secondary schools. In one of the slides, it said SEL during the first 6 weeks. What does that look like given they're doing the alternating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 periods? Is it a period or is it a?
You know, our counselors. Yeah, good question. Our counselors have researched secondary appropriate lessons, and our principals have committed content areas to implement. Like I said, we won't have it immediately. Probably within a couple of weeks, we'll start implementing. At the middle school level, I think it's in our physical education classes. Everybody has a physical education class. At the high school level, I'm not entirely sure. I do believe it's in English classes, not positive. But so in 1 week, there's an A day or a B day, or a, you know what I'm saying. Half of our teachers would do it on Monday and the other half would do it on Tuesday. So that's how we're implementing these very important topics and lessons with our kids. Do you want to speak to the elementary level, Mrs. Hanson, just in case we have elementary parents with the same question?
Actually, I think I'm going to pass it off to Angela first because it looks like she was ready to go. So, Angela.
Thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were there, Joyce. Your face was missing. Yeah, so at the elementary level, we'll be doing a program called Second Steps, and this is a social emotional program that's been around for years and years. They continue to evolve with the needs of our students and the world. And so everyone has been given updated materials, and teachers will start teaching that within their classrooms pretty much right away. And the expectation is that specific lessons are taught. The counselors have identified priority lessons that each classroom will teach. And then, of course, each school kind of has their own distinct flavor. And so each school has different programs as well that they will be implementing through their classrooms. I can't speak as well to the leader in me, so maybe Joyce can do that for me.
So I think the Leader in Me is also going to look very similar to Second Steps. Leader in Me is another highly research-based program with lots of supports that Monarch Grove started implementing last year, and they are continuing that implementation, and it will be incorporated into the classrooms just as it was last year, but this time obviously in a virtual format. And the expectation is very similar to what Second Steps is. There's priority lessons that have been identified, and teachers will be working on those, you know, kind of characteristics of the Leader in Me that are most prioritized at this time.
Do I see that Mr. our dance has a question. There we go.
Good afternoon. Sorry about
Hi.
that. Yeah, I just had a question. There's been a lot of talk, discussion here about elementary school youngsters and small group counseling, etc. And I was just curious, is there any programs and or for the high school kids, and to elaborate a little bit more on that, specifically student type support groups with perhaps a facilitator, something of that nature?
I can answer that. We have had small group with like topic at the high school level. I think it's been a couple of years since we've done that. Our secondary counselors have been meeting to kind of shore up the SELs that we offer, and that is one of our topics. What are small group topics that would support our students, and beginning to facilitate more groups like that. I also think I mentioned that we have marriage and family therapists across all schools, including our secondary schools. Our marriage and family therapists, starting this year, in the past they've done one-on-one or one-to-one therapeutic supports with their students. We've asked our MFTs to do small groups starting this year. So that will be at the secondary level as well as the elementary level. So there will be small group opportunity. In the current distance learning we're in, it would be, you know, Zoom opportunities with your MFT or Zoom opportunities with your counselor, but that is on our list of services to provide this year. Good question, thank you.
Well, yeah, and I guess to further that discussion, I guess my challenge would be that I would anticipate that students might have some reluctance to reach out to these counselors. I mean, I think it's great that you've provided these services for students to sign up and or contact a counselor via email, etc. But I guess I would challenge and say, look, if there were an opportunity for students to come together as small groups, if you will, with some sort of facilitation, I think that would be really beneficial, especially at the high school level. It may take some time to get some traction, but I do think it could be beneficial.
So, and do I hear you saying come up with a seamless way for the kids to ask to be part of the group?
Yeah, I'm not, that's not in my wheelhouse. I'm not an expert on this, but I think that, I know I have a student who has concerns going into her senior year and expressed, you know, disappointment, to say the least.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a number of other peers out there of hers that share the same feeling. And you know, my response to her is, you know what? Yeah, you have every reason to be angry and disappointed. And guess what? I'll bet you that you have a lot of peers out there that are feeling the same way. My challenge would be, how do you collectively get those youngsters, those students together to have a good, healthy conversation about it? And it's not going to be for everybody. I get that. But perhaps there may be some that might say, you know what, yeah, I would like to talk about this, and I would like to express my concerns and my frustration. And I just personally, I think it's healthy.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Other questions?
Not look like there are any other questions. Oh no, Lena has her hand up.
Okay.
So on the grid, it had in the elementary, it had bullying listed, but it didn't have bullying listed in the secondary level. Or something to
So
address.
our elementary sites have, actually Joyce can talk a little bit about this, the purchase of the bullying curriculum, We also have curriculum at our middle school levels. I'm not aware at the high school level, but definitely at the middle school level. Joyce, talk a little bit about the elementary one.
So Second Steps has a bullying curriculum that was purchased this year, and our elementary counselors are going to be presenting those lessons in classes starting later this school year. We're going to kind of go through our priority lessons of Second Steps first, and then our counselors are going to be presenting the anti-bullying lessons at that point. And Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 4 lessons per grade level, right? Okay, perfect. So those will be coming up in late fall, winter.
Mm-hmm. And Lena, I know that we have bullying content at the middle level. I just can't speak to it at the high school level, but I can do a little research and post maybe some information associated with this presentation if when I get some specifics.
Thanks. I mean, it just seems like it would be difficult to execute with distance learning anyway, but I feel like in this environment where we have groups that feel disenfranchised, either race or gender or, you know, who they love, you know, that it would be something important to address and put action to what the board just approved about the resolution regarding, you know, anti-racism. So thank you.
You got it. I know that our high schools tackle social media bullying in that venue, and broader than that, I just can't give you specifics right now, but please understand it's important at our secondary schools, including the high schools, and I know that they're doing something. I just can't quote it right now. So I do want to say, I know it doesn't look like there's any more questions. Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like. I always like to remind our parents that our site counselors are kind of the backbone of our SEL program, of the emotional supports on our campuses. We do have MFTs to support our kids, but that's with the help of our counselor. The kids start with our counselors. Our counselors know the kids on their campuses and try to get to know all of their needs. So do remember your school counselor as your first point of contact if you have SEL concerns about your student. And as I said earlier, Joyce works with elementary counselors. I work with secondary counselors. Mr. Dowler works with our marriage and family therapists across the district. So just something to remember. I'm pretty proud of the supports that our board has approved this year. You know, the increased MFT, our counselor on special assignments, a real commitment to social emotional learning. So I think that's something to be proud of as a district, and we have real high hopes for supporting our students and families throughout the year. If you don't have any more questions, this presentation will be on our website, so you can take a look at it again. You're always welcome to shoot any questions you might have to anybody on this panel. Thanks so much for taking the time this afternoon. We really appreciate it.